What really happened to Emma Fillipoff? The Fairmont Empress Hotel in Victoria, British Columbia, has this elegant, chateau-style look to it. On the night of November 28, 2012, its lights cast a warm glow on the damp streets. But right there on the pavement, a quiet, desperate scene was playing out. It was just after 7 p.m., and two police officers were talking to a young woman. She was 26, slender, with long brown hair. And she was barefoot. For 45 agonizing minutes, the cops tried to talk to her, to figure out why she was so obviously distressed. She barely gave them anything. They checked her over, decided she wasn't a danger to herself or anyone else, and with their hands legally tied, they had to let her go. She walked away from that grand hotel, turned a corner, and just vanished. That woman was Emma Fillipoff, and that conversation was the last confirmed time anyone ever saw her. What came next wasn't closure, but one of Canada's most baffling and heartbreaking mysteries, a story of paranoia, bizarre clues, and a silence that has now lasted for over a decade. If you want to understand how someone can just disappear from a busy street, you have to understand who they were. Emma Fillipoff wasn't a ghost. She was a daughter, a friend, someone with dreams and a unique, wandering spirit. Born on January 6, 1986, in Perth, Ontario, Emma was a sensitive and creative person from day one. She was an artist, a writer, a trained chef, a young woman who felt things deeply and was drawn to the beauty of the world. Her whole life was a search for connection, not just with people, but with places. She traveled, worked seasonal jobs, and lived a life that was intentionally transient. She didn't like being tied down. This wasn't a sign of instability, it was just who she was. Her mother, Shelley, described her as free-spirited and independent. She wrote poetry, filled journals with her thoughts and sketches, and had a real eye for photography. In the fall of 2011, that searching spirit brought her to Victoria, British Columbia. She was pulled in by the West Coast vibe, the rugged coastline, the artsy community, the promise of a fresh start. She got there with no real plan, no job lined up, just a feeling she told a friend that something amazing was about to happen. And for a while, it seemed like it was. She found work in kitchens, putting her chef skills to use. She made friends, explored the city, and for a time, lived out of her distinctive red 1993 Mazda MPV van. It was her ride and her sanctuary. She was living life on her own terms, valuing experiences over things. But somewhere along the way, things started to unravel. The woman who showed up full of hope began to change, and that amazing something she was waiting for started to feel less like a promise and more like a threat. The unraveling. The change in Emma was slow, and then all at once. The vibrant, artistic, and gentle person her friends in Victoria knew started to disappear, replaced by someone who seemed haunted by fear and paranoia. This wasn't just a bad mood. It was a slow-motion descent that was cutting her off from the world she'd come to explore. In the weeks before she vanished, her behavior became more and more erratic. Friends and staff at the Sandy Merriman House, a women's shelter where she'd been staying, noticed big changes. She'd stand completely still for long periods, just lost in thought. She started getting rid of her belongings. Things that used to mean something to her were now just given away. At one point, she was seen moving the shelter's furniture outside for no clear reason. This wasn't the free-spirited Emma anymore. This was someone in real trouble. The biggest red flag came from a series of frantic phone calls to her mom, Shelley, back in Ontario. The calls were a mess of desperation and indecision. One minute, Emma would be pleading with her mom to come get her, to help her pack up and go home. She sounded terrified and lost. But then, just as her mom started making plans, she'd call back and say everything was fine. She wanted to stay. This heartbreaking back and forth happened over and over, leaving her family thousands of miles away feeling helpless and sick with worry. Emma was clearly fighting something, but nobody knew what it was. Her journals from this time, which were found later, give us a peek into her fractured mindset. The writing that was once poetic became scattered and disjointed. She wrote about feeling lost, about a deep depression that had taken over. It was the writing of someone who felt like they were losing their grip. The people around her in Victoria got so concerned that the shelter staff actually called the police to report her deteriorating mental state. But because of privacy laws, they couldn't tell them everything. The police noted the call but couldn't do much without a clear sign of immediate danger. Her mom, Shelley, has said since then that she believes one simple, human phone call, one that maybe bent the rules a little, could have changed everything. A simple, "If I were Emma's mom, I'd get on a plane," might have been all it took. But that call never happened. And as November came to an end, Emma's downward spiral picked up speed, leading to one final, bewildering day where every move she made seemed to pull her further away from safety. The final 24 hours. November 28th, 2012, was a damp, gray day in Victoria. For Emma Fillipoff, it was the last day anyone can say for sure they saw her. Her actions that day paint a picture of a woman on the run, but whether she was running from someone or something inside her own head is still the question. Her day started at 7 a.m. at the Chateau Victoria, where her red Mazda van was parked. Her van wasn't just a car. It held almost everything she owned: her passport, laptop, journals, camera, and clothes. The van looked like it belonged to someone ready to live their life, not abandon it. Later that morning, she was spotted on surveillance footage at a local YMCA, looking tense and hesitant as she scanned the area. But one of the most revealing stops was at a 7-Eleven at 5:54 p.m. Security cameras recorded her making two strange purchases: a prepaid cell phone and a $200 prepaid credit card. For someone with little money who was getting rid of her things, this was a big deal. The footage is tough to watch. She keeps walking toward the door, then stopping, looking outside, and pulling back into the store. She looks terrified, as if she's afraid of who or what is out there. It wasn't just caution, it was raw fear. Around 6:10 p.m., she did something that seemed decisive. She hailed a cab and asked to go to the Victoria International Airport. With a prepaid credit card, she could have bought a ticket and been gone. But on the way there, something changed. She told the driver she was worried about the fare and asked to be taken back to the shelter, even though she had more than enough money to cover the ride. It's one of the most baffling moments in the timeline. She was so close to leaving, maybe even going home like she'd told her mom, but she pulled back. She left the shelter again and soon after was seen in the heart of downtown, right in front of the famous Empress Hotel. This is where it all came to a head. An acquaintance named Dennis Quay saw her and was shocked. Emma was barefoot, looking confused, paranoid, and deeply distressed. He felt he had to do something. At 7:17 p.m., he called 911, reporting a woman in severe emotional trouble. That call brought the police, starting the last documented chapter of her life. The story of Emma Fillipoff is a deep and complicated mystery, filled with details that are as confusing as they are tragic. These are the kinds of stories we are dedicated to exploring here, not just for the mystery, but for the human element at the center of it all. If you find these in-depth investigations compelling and want to help keep these stories from being forgotten, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. Your support allows us to continue shedding light on cases that deserve to be heard. Now, let's get back to that final, fateful encounter. The disappearance. When the Victoria police arrived, They started a 45-minute conversation that has been picked apart and agonized over ever since. They found Emma just like Dennis Quaid had said, distraught and shoeless on a cold night. They were there to do a wellness check, standard procedure for someone who might be in a mental health crisis. But the conversation was pretty one-sided. The officers talked with her for a long time, trying to figure out her state of mind and if she was a danger to herself or others. Emma was barely communicating. Her answers were short, sometimes just a nod, sometimes nothing at all. She was in her own world, and they couldn't find a way in. They asked if she wanted to hurt herself. She said no. They asked if she felt safe. She seemed to say yes. You have to see it from the officer's side, too. They were in a tough spot. They were dealing with an adult who, was clearly upset, but she wasn't breaking any laws. In their professional judgment, she didn't meet the criteria to be brought in under the Mental Health Act. Forcing her to go with them would have been a violation of her rights. They offered her a ride to a shelter or a hospital. She refused. After they felt they had done all they could within the law, they ended the check. At around 8 p.m., the police let Emma Fillipoff walk away. She was last seen walking north on Government Street, away from the Empress Hotel, and she just blended into the evening crowd. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. No one knows where she went from there. She just stepped out of the light of the hotel and into thin air. The terrible irony is that just hours later, around 11 p.m., Emma's mom, Shelley, arrived in Victoria. She had flown all the way across the country, driven by that gut feeling only a mother has. She went right to the Sandy Merriman house, expecting to find Emma. Instead, the staff told her that Emma hadn't shown up that night. A wave of dread washed over Shelley. She knew something was terribly wrong. She called the police from the shelter and, around midnight, officially reported her daughter missing. The investigation started right away. Police knew about Emma's van and found it in the Chateau Victoria parking lot. What they found inside just made the mystery deeper. The van was untouched. Her passport, laptop, camera, journals, all of it was there. These are the things you take if you're planning to leave. The passport especially. If she wanted to disappear and leave the country, she would have needed it. The state of the van screamed that whatever happened to Emma, it wasn't a plan. She was planning on coming back, but she never did. The investigation and the aftermath. With Emma officially missing, a full-scale investigation kicked off. The Victoria police started piecing together her last known movements, creating that timeline of her final, frantic day. They knew the first 48 hours are everything, so they searched the city. Dive teams even checked the cold waters of the inner harbor, just a short walk from where she was last seen, but they found nothing. Shelley Fillipoff refused to just sit and wait. She became the heart of the search, organizing volunteers who scoured streets, parks, and industrial areas, putting up missing posters with Emma's face everywhere. The community came together, but the city that swallowed Emma whole wasn't giving up any clues. As days bled into weeks, the investigation grew. Hundreds of tips came in from all over the country, but every single one led to a dead end. Every reported sighting was a case of mistaken identity. It was a frustrating, heartbreaking cycle. The police and her family looked at every possible theory. First, there's the theory that Emma had a severe mental health crisis and wandered off. Her behavior, her journals, her final appearance, it all points to a mind in turmoil. Maybe she became disoriented and had a tragic accident, ending up somewhere hidden. It's a plausible theory, but it doesn't quite explain why there's been absolutely no trace of her. Second, maybe she chose to disappear. Maybe she wanted to cut all ties and start over, off the grid. She was resourceful and had lived a transient life before. But this theory just doesn't line up with the evidence. She left her van, her passport, her laptop, Everything. She had called her mom for help, a sign she wanted to come home, not vanish. The third theory, the one that started to feel more likely as time went on, is foul play. Was her paranoia real? Was she running from someone who wanted to hurt her? Her fear at the 7-Eleven could have been because she was being followed. Maybe in her vulnerable state, she crossed paths with the wrong person. This would explain the sudden, total nature of her disappearance. She didn't just wander off. She was taken. For years, the case was stuck. The file got thicker with dead-end tips, but nothing new emerged. Then, a year and a half later, the first truly bizarre lead surfaced, one that would introduce a mysterious new person to the story. The man in the green shirt. In May 2014, a year and a half after Emma vanished, the case got a jolt. In Vancouver's Gastown district, a ferry ride from Victoria, the owners of a clothing store had a strange encounter. An agitated man walked into their shop holding a crumpled, weathered missing poster for Emma Fillipoff. His behavior was instantly alarming. He wasn't trying to help. He was angry. He threw the poster down and said something stunning. "It's one of those missing persons posters, except she's not missing. She's my girlfriend, and she ran away 'cause she hates her parents." Before the store owners could react, he was gone. They immediately called the police. This was the most solid lead the investigation had seen. The man's statement was specific and deeply unsettling. He was inserting himself into the narrative, claiming to know Emma and offering a cruel, dismissive reason for her disappearance. Luckily, the store's security camera got a clear shot of him. The footage showed a man in a green t-shirt, which is how he got his nickname, the man in the green shirt. The footage also gave a description: about 6 feet tall, dark hair, a noticeable scar near his hairline, and tattoos on both arms. Most importantly, he walked with a pronounced limp. His left knee seemed to turn inward. But even with clear footage and a description, his identity was a mystery. Police shared the image, but no one could identify him. He appeared, made his shocking claim, and vanished. For Emma's mother, Shelley, this lead was torture. She never believed he was Emma's boyfriend. Emma was private, yes, but she loved her family. The idea that she ran away because she hates her parents was completely out of character. To Shelley, the man's story was a lie, but it was a lie that suggested he knew something. Why would he say that? Was it a sick prank? Or was he nervously trying to cover something up? For years, the man in the green shirt was a ghost. But in late 2023 and 2024, a major new push was launched to identify him. Emma's family worked with a forensic artist to create a new composite sketch based on the old footage, hoping a clearer image might finally jog someone's memory. The Victoria police made a fresh public appeal, focusing heavily on him. Detective Constable Bob Ellis stated, "This investigation needs just one person with the right information to come forward. If you are the person known as Green Shirt Guy, if you know who he is, contact the Victoria Police Department. Even after all this time, he's a critical person of interest." More than 12 years have passed since Emma Fillipoff walked away from the Empress Hotel and into nothing. Time hasn't made this mystery any easier to solve. Her case is still one of Canada's most perplexing and tragic unsolved disappearances. She isn't just a face on a poster. She was a real, complex young woman whose story ended with a question mark. The investigation is still active, a joint effort between the Victoria Police, forensic experts, and her incredibly dedicated family. A docuseries, Barefoot in the Night, the search for Emma Fillipoff, is in the works, trying to keep her story alive, because public memory is often the last real hope for a breakthrough. The theories about what happened to her still swirl. Did she succumb to a mental health crisis and find a lonely inn somewhere no one has looked? Did she somehow manage to start a new life, totally off the grid? Or was her fear real, and did she fall victim to someone who saw her vulnerability as a chance to do harm? The man in the green shirt looms over that last theory, an unidentified man whose strange claims make him the most compelling person of interest in this whole case. The new sketch of his face is a plea for answers, a hope that someone, somewhere, will recognize him and finally break the silence. The story of Emma Fillipoff is a painful reminder of how easily someone can slip through the cracks, even on a busy street, even after talking to the police. It's a story about a family's unending search for answers and the haunting truth that some questions don't have easy ones. The search for Emma continues, driven by the hope that one day, one single tip will finally bring her home. Until then, we're left right where her story left us, in the dark, watching her walk away, and wondering what really happened to Emma Fillipoff.